Good morning. This is March 7th, Friday, March 7th, seeing it's 9, a little after 9 a.m. We will convene the Affordable Housing Growth and Development Trust Fund Board meeting. Um, Please note that in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, the chair will inquire whether anyone is taping this meeting and to please make their presence known. Seeing none, I'll call the meeting to order with a roll call vote. Laura Schufelt,
Present.
Mark Milne,
Present.
Andy Clyburn,
Here.
Mark Ells here. Okay, thanks everyone. Do we have anybody from the public today who would like to comment? Seeing none, we'll move to topics of discussion. We had a continuation request from Standard Holdings for approval of transfer of trust subsidized property and an introduction of the proposed purchaser scheduled for today. We've been asked by Tim Tellman to, is it a continuance request, Jillian, just so I'm clear?
No, sir, it was actually a withdrawal
A
request.
withdrawal. Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
and any continuance, I think we would have had a date certain or needed to recommend, so he said withdrawal.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, we will move on to topic number 2. Unless there's anybody questions or discussion. Okay, seeing none. Topic number 2, planning and reporting. Item A, vote on draft 2024 end of year report to Community Preservation Committee. That's something that you had taken back last time, done some modifications, and now have circulated again to the committee.
Yes. Yes, sir. That was the previous draft has been edited to remove all references under the Affordable Housing or Affordable Homes Act changes. So there's no reference in terms of the seasonal communities or the ADUs as pending options. And I added, Mark had sent me the balance sheet, so that has been included as well. And I think it's ready to go if you unless you have further edits.
Okay. Does anybody have any comment at this point on the report? Okay, so this would be both acceptance of the report, and then from there you would proceed to CPC to share the report and provide an oral update at their meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. All right. Do I have a motion to approve? Laura, did you have a question? Or?
No, sorry, it just came off.
Oh, that's okay.
I'd move to approve.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Andy? Okay, any further discussion? Yes, Laura.
Just, Jillian, if you'd let us know when you're going to be presenting at the CPC.
I'll coordinate with Ellen on that as to when they have time on their item or their agenda. But
just let us know. Thanks.
absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll move to a vote. Laura Schufelt,
Yes.
Mark Milne,
Yes.
Andy Clyburn,
Yes.
Mark Ells. Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Item B, discussion of minimum qualifications for fair housing lottery agents and ongoing compliance monitoring agents. Jillian, did you want to?
Well, I just wanted you to have, so I put in the packet from Mass Housing, they had just a list of monitoring agent qualifications and duties. And so that is definitely, I was going to use that as our start for if there were additional things we wanted to add to that list. And there is a draft of a monitoring report that has resulted from the county's regional housing services office, their pilot program at the county level for a regional housing and services office. This draft report, if you will, was intended to include the items that would typically be included in monitoring. So the draft, I think, is probably a good place to start. It is part of the reason that this is important for our agenda or for our discussion is that we did receive a prior monitoring report that was simply a page long, and it just didn't provide the level of detail that we were looking for. So this is why this is coming back, and I'm open to any suggestions you might have.
Okay. Just I have a question before I open it to discussion. So, and you've blended a little bit, I think, B and C in what you've said. So Corey, I don't know that Jillian's been privy to it, but I know Jim's been talking with the county about their regional housing services. And I'm not sure how privy you are to all of those conversations, but you know, I am unclear as to what role that will serve for all of us in the county. And therefore, are we looking, even though this isn't the town, this is the trust, but are we looking to use their documents because in essence we will use their service, or are we looking to do something different than that? And then I'll go to discussion. Are you privy to Jim's conversations as to how this is proceeding?
Uh, I I am a bit. I haven't been privy recently with Jim and
All right.
his conversations with Barrett Planning, but I'm assuming we would use their template and have them do all of our monitoring services. Um, that's about as far as I've gotten with Jim in terms of discussion. And I haven't had a recent conversation with him about how we will proceed moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Jillian, and then I'll go to the board.
I just wanted to comment. This is viewed as being independent from that at the moment. So this format was I was suggesting it could be a base format for whatever the trust wanted to do in the event that there is not an intermunicipal agreement signed with the county or with the for the services office. You should still address this issue so that we have a minimum standard that we're seeking for our reports.
Okay, Laura, and then Andy.
Just to be clear, all of the information that we're looking for is required usually in the grant agreement, the regulatory agreement, and the monitoring service agreement. So when we got one pager that didn't give us all the information, we had to go back to the monitoring agent and say, hey, you're supposed to tell us X, Y, and Z. And then they came back and they still haven't, there's still one, the actual rent being charged. We still haven't seen that. So this is all following what should be provided anyway. Giving them a form and a format to put it in just makes it easier for everyone if we have a consistent template.
Agreed. I guess my question is, do we broaden that consistency to be in sync with what the county will be doing? Because I'm assuming ultimately we will pursue an intermunicipal. Go ahead, Laura.
I don't think we know yet exactly what they're going to be doing.
All right.
Because Barrett Planning is their contract's up the end of this fiscal year. And so it'll be the actual practitioners will be RFP'd or procured. And they may come in with their own template, so it's going to be all the same information. It's just how it's presented. I
Okay.
think.
Andy?
Yes, sir. I was going to say, I think it's three-pronged. What we're talking about now, making sure that we get what is in the current grant agreements that they report out. But I think we should also look moving forward to address some issues that perhaps we haven't written into our grant agreements to date. including an inspection, rather than just telling us the rent and the lottery was provided, done correctly, all of that, but actually have an inspection of the unit to make sure that it's of some quality. I get a little confused because I was actually talking with Jillian offline about this. Our role as a town versus our role as a trust. And because we're giving trust money, I don't know that it's really a town inspection, but I think these monitoring agreements are where we could bake it in. And if they know up front, they can break that cost into their pro forma. But then the third prong, I think, is if we do sign a letter of support for the regional county entity, perhaps we can request that this inspection somehow gets included in whatever they end up putting out.
Okay, Laura, please.
This is a little tangential to what Andy's saying. I was gonna bring it up. I think an inspection of the unit is, necessary and typically, is done, could be done and made part of the monitoring agreement. But I also think that when we're giving construction funding, and we've done it, where our money's parsed out as a project goes along, like in 850. But even some of the smaller projects, we need to have some kind of quality control over, renovations especially. And I think, there's instances where it's hard to see where our money went. So,
And I'm fully supportive of what you've just asked for and the process Andy just described. And I think, possibly because I'm removed from the discussions, trying to understand ultimately the role that the county might play. And I want to make sure that if we're requiring things greater than they're currently anticipating in their scope of service, I mean, we're the big player here. And so I want to make sure, and we don't ask much from the county. So I want to make sure, and this is important to me. And this is an absolutely, it is an appropriate role for the county to play for all of us here on Cape Cod. So Corey, take that message back to Jim. Andy and I will talk with him. But certainly to proceed with something in the interim, I'm fully supportive of. My only question really is to our attorney, Galvin. Has he had a chance to look at what we're doing, and does he have any comment on it?
Mute myself. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. I have read it on the qualifications and duties. It says you have to have experience, but there's no minimum levels of any of those things. In my experience is there's 3 or 4 people you can go to outside of a housing authority to do this because no one else is qualified to do it. So there's very few people that are actually experienced enough to do it. Maybe we set some minimum levels, but we make sure we don't exclude the county if they're going to end up doing it. And I completely agree that the only way to really know what's going on is to have an annual inspection of the units. You often enough you find that the people aren't taking care of the units, or that there's somebody else living there and they're sharing expenses, and it becomes actually a helpful way to discern some enforcement. So I'm completely supportive of that. I think the monitoring report that's been offered here is actually a very adequate monitoring report. If we get that type of information, we're well ahead of the game. But I do think that the minimum qualifications for a monitoring agent should be an annual inspection.
Okay, Laura, please. Thank you.
so there are minimum requirements for marketing, monitoring agents that are built into the LIP guidelines, I believe, the 40B guidelines anyway. And there actually are a lot of people who are qualified to do it. There's just not a lot of people who want to do it. because if they're lottery agents, they're also qualified to be monitoring agents, but it's kind of a lifetime commitment, you know. You eh, it's you're the monitoring agent, you know, moving forward until you find someone else to take it over for you. And it doesn't pay that well. So that's kind of where we are. I do trainings usually annually, sometimes twice a year, to certify lottery agents and monitoring agents. So the Cape is a little uh, lacking in qualified folks, but Plymouth Redevelopment does it. Hack doesn't do monitoring anymore. Um, and you know, some of the housing authorities do it. The problem with the housing authorities is they don't often come to my trainings, and so they technically are not certified
So Laura, you're saying in your state role,
in my
you
state role.
offer these trainings and
Mhm.
do you do them, on an annual basis or
Yeah, at
as
least.
needed?
Yeah, as needed, but it's usually once I get, you know, a handful of folks that are looking for it, we usually get 50 to 60 um, participants.
Okay,
Um, so
okay. Um, so how would you like to proceed relevant to the, well, item B, we had our discussion, I think. Are we moving into item C discussion on the draft format at this point? So how would you like to proceed relevant to that draft? Oh, Laura?
I would suggest that if we add that the draft itself is fine, except for adding qualifications um, for monitoring agents, um, which can be state certification, um, or, you know, there's trainings out there. If they've taken the trainings, they'll have the certification. Um, and inserting language on an annual physical inspection.
Okay. All right. So with those two additions and the review of Attorney Galvin, um, would anybody like to make a motion relevant to what Laura has offered?
I would make a motion to accept exactly what Laura outlined, pending the review of Attorney Galvin.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll move to a vote. Laura Schufelt,
Yes.
Mark Milne,
Yes.
Andy Clyburn,
Yes,
Mark Ells, yes. Thank you all. Um, Matters not reasonably anticipated by the chair. Just, and Laura probably knows this, but I was in Boston, not that I was in Boston yesterday, but what I'm going to say about being there. And so we were at the State House for a good portion of the day, and Julian came in, and I spent some time with him, and he's going to be the chair of the Housing Committee. Did you know that, Laura? That's maybe no surprise to anybody, but so he kind of offers his anything Barnstable or any entity such as ours that needs either direct or indirect support to let him know. So I just wanted to share that with you, and he shared that with me yesterday. So he seemed very excited about it. Is that a good thing, Laura?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good thing.
Great.
He's yeah, I'm on the seasonal communities working group, and
Yes.
he's um get everything done halftime for what we, you know, what we anticipated the working group to get things done. So, you know,
Okay.
he wants it done yesterday.
Yes, I can tell. All
Yeah.
right, good. That I don't have anything else to share. Laura, do you?
I have one thing I'm just gonna reference this until I get permission to share it. But Barrett Planning Group did a report for the CDP, which is used to be called the Lower Cape CDC, um, on the realities of year-round deed restrictions. And it's pretty eye-opening, and I'd love to be able to share it. I just don't know if it's public yet because it was done for a private entity, and but it has been presented a few times. I think that putting not really a trust hat, but kind of a trust hat on to say that it would be great to have it updated for or have it revised to be Barnstable centric. To bring in our stats instead of the Lower Cape, but I think it would be interesting for folks to see. So I'm working on it.
Okay. Let me know if I can be of any help.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay. Any further discussion on in matters not reasonably anticipated? Seeing none, we'll move to item 4. Approval of the minutes from December 6, 2024. Do those first. Did everybody have time to review the minutes? Does anyone have any comment on the minutes? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Okay, any further discussion? None. Roll call vote. Laura Schufel,
yes.
Mark Milne,
Yes.
Andy Clyburn,
Yes.
Mark Ells, yes. We also have a set of minutes from February 7th, 2025. Y'all had a chance to look at those? Do you have any comments? Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Roll call vote. Laura Schufelt,
Yes.
Mark Milne,
Yes.
Andy Clyburn,
Abstain.
Mark Ells, yes. Okay, thank you. Topics for future meetings and agendas. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to point out that the ability to meet remotely is currently intended to lapse at the end of this month. So there is some legislation pending to extend that, and we're cautiously optimistic that'll happen. But if the remote meeting extension is not provided, your next meeting may have to be in person. So we'll have to kind of watch that.
Okay, and that, I mean, I would, that's a good point, thank you. And Jillian, you'll have to watch coordinating that. Um, Certainly, I am in office to do that, and I would want to talk to the other individuals. Mark Milne is not, so I would want to grant him that ability to participate in the board meeting remotely. Beyond that, it would be a scheduling basis for Laura and Andy, but I would allow that flexibility with any member of the board, just so you know as you try to move this forward, okay?
Yeah. The only other thing I wanted to add is that doesn't mean that Mark Milnick could not participate remotely. The regular remote participation rules still apply.
Yep.
And remember, the rules have been amended under the regular rules that you don't even have to have you don't have to state a reason. All you have to do is affirm that you're alone and let everybody know if you get disconnected or somehow. So it's perfectly permissible to have members participating, but you have to have a quorum present and a chair in the live meeting. Those are the main rules.
Yep. And then if someone's remote, I got to do roll call everything.
Yeah,
Right?
all votes in roll call.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I guess we'll see what happens. Thank you,
Right.
sir.
Okay.
But I have a question about that, Mark. If that doesn't get passed, and we do decide to allow for remote participation for this board, do you have to extend that to the ability to every board and commission?
I'll have to go to Karen Nober and have her prior to COVID, the way it was written is yes. If I
Yeah.
open up to one, I open up to all.
Mhm.
And so procedurally, that is something that's been afforded to the town council. So I would assume that if this doesn't get continued, that because we've afforded it to council, then I will be issuing that boards committee, they can do remote.
Yeah.
And then you would be following the rules that Attorney Galvin just cited, and Karen will have to do some training, and off we'll go. So that's the way I anticipate it, Mark. I just think our world is a combination of in person and remote here forward, and so to try not to do that, I think is not an equation for success. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So good question. Um, any further topics? Oh, yes, Laura.
I think we've talked about it before, but nothing's moved forward, is trying to, tighten up some of our grant agreements to allow for requiring a cost certification or, some mechanism so that, at the end of, so that we know that our money is being used, is needed to being used and not just supplementing developers' profit.
In
So
your opinion, Laura, is that something that would be a combination of Mark and Attorney Galvin, or how would you envision us advancing that review?
I think, first of all, it's making sure we get updated pro formas before the, at construction loan. So we know not from before they have any funding, what they're going to do. And then being able to adjust our amount if they don't need it, which has
So it's
happened.
really not Mark, it's more a legal discussion amongst ourselves that has financial implications.
Right. And then the cost certification they have to do pretty much for all
Yeah.
funding. So it's just getting a copy of it.
So Attorney Galvin, is that something you can take under
Yeah.
advisement and then come
Yeah.
back to us when you feel you have something that merits our review?
I would do that. I'll draft an additional paragraph to insert in our grant agreements on cost certifications, and I'll run it by Laura Schufelt, and we'll have that for your next meeting.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, good. All right. Any other items? Yes, Mark.
It may be that time again for us to approach the Community Preservation Committee for funding. Our funds from that bucket are pretty low at this point after our last commitment to Copacabana. And I spoke to the chair last week. They have several large projects coming forward that he's made me aware of, and they're looking to probably put together a long-term financing plan for their funding. And he did inquire me as to when we were going to come forward again, because I think they're committed to providing us some more funding. So I think maybe when we should think about when we want to do that.
Okay, okay, so that's typically brought to the board. We vote to move it to CPC, correct? And with an amount, and
Yep.
then we move that to CPC for their consideration. Okay, so Jillian, can you coordinate with Mark and Attorney Galvin so that can be brought to the board at the appropriate time? Laura,
Yes.
do you want to be looped into that, or are you good with it proceeding the way I've said?
I'm good with it proceeding the way you said. It'll come
Okay,
back
great.
to the board.
Yep, thank you. Okay, you can put that on the list as well. I'd appreciate it. Thanks, Mark. Any other? Okay, seeing none. Next scheduled meetings for Friday, April 4th, 9 a.m. And it's time to adjourn. Do I
Motion
have?
to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Roll call vote. Laura Schufelt,
Yes.
Mark Milne,
Yes.
Andy Clyburn,
Yes.
Mark Ells. Yes. Thank you all. Appreciate it.